Learning French at school just sucks. Seriously, did you take French at school for years and still can't speak French? You might even have had very good grades in French and still not be able to speak it. I have met so many people in that situation. In this video, we explore why this is the case and how you can avoid repeating the same mistakes when you study French as an adult. As you will see, none of these mistakes are your fault, and it's not even your teacher's fault. It's more like a general context of the school that just is not adapted to learning French. So no matter how serious you are as a student or how great your teacher is, a school is just not a great place to learn French. But here is the good news. As an adult, you get to choose every aspect of your French study. So in this video, we will explore what goes wrong with standard language teaching at school and which elements you need to change to get real results. I'm talking getting fluent in a matter of months kind of results. So if that sounds interesting, keep watching. My name is Angèle Preto, and on this channel, we talk about what it really takes to learn French. Make sure you subscribe to this channel so you don't miss my future video. Today, we are exploring 6 specific elements that just prevent you from actually learning French when you're in a school context. And the first one is a lack of a good reason to learn French. I often point out that motivation is everything. If you are not motivated, then nothing will happen. And as your coach, I can give you tons of advice, but I cannot give you motivation. Your motivation comes from you. You need to have a good reason to learn French. And honestly, I learn French because it's on the program or because my parents chose it for me is about as bad as it gets for reason to learn. If you really want to learn French, you certainly have way better reasons than that. So make sure that these reasons are crystal clear to you and that you keep them top of mind. This is how you fix this issue. You want to make sure you know why you're doing it and you don't forget about it. That was number 1. Number 2 is not enough time to speak. There are too many students and not enough lesson time. When I was 11, we used to have 4 hours a week of English teaching at school. And there were about 30 of us in the classroom. If you do the math, this amounts to whooping 8 minutes per week per student. And this assumes that the teacher would never speak and that no time would be dedicated to anything else than speaking. But as we know, most of the time in school class, most of the time in the language class is not dedicated to speaking anyway. That would leave us with maybe 2 minutes per week speaking the language. With 2 minutes of actual weekly practice, you should be happy that you learned anything at all. So the obvious fix here is to make sure that you have plenty of time to practice speaking the language, because how you get better at speaking is by speaking. I know that sounds obvious, but most of the time we're just not doing it. So make sure you have plenty of time to practice. The best thing you can do, of course, is one-on-one coaching, and you can do that with me if you'd like. I leave the link in the description below. You can find out more. But I also recommend any other modality that can give you lots of time to practice, such as one-on-one tutoring, learning in a small group, or a one-on-one language exchange with a French speaker who's learning English. That was number 2. Number 3 is over-focusing on grammar. In school, grammar just has a really important place. This stems from an outdated mindset which used to view language as a set of rules and exceptions rather than the way human communicates. And also, let's be honest, it's a lot easier to correct a grammar test with exercises than to make 30 students speak. So it's also a convenient thing that school focuses a lot on grammar, but that's not great for your language skills, because the truth is grammar just isn't everything. Grammar is much less important than we tend to think. If you speak without respecting any grammar rule, you definitely won't be able to pass an exam, but you will be understood by natives most of the time, assuming that your pronunciation and your vocabulary are decent. So now the question is, what do you want? Do you want to ace your school exam, or do you want to be understood when you speak the language? Because that are very different goals. If you aim for the latter, if you aim for being understood, focusing so much on learning grammar is basically a waste of time and effort. If you are concerned about learning grammar correctly, I recommend this video. It will show you a good way that you can learn grammar and also learn to speak and understand at the same time. My approach is to always put the emphasis on speaking and understanding the real-life language, and only using grammar as a way to support this goal. And I really recommend you do the same in your French study. Number 4, and this is a biggie, is punishing mistakes instead of encouraging them. So another way that school destroys your language learning capacities and your self-confidence is by making you believe that mistakes are bad. If you believe that mistakes are bad and you fear being punished for making mistakes, you will do everything you can to avoid making mistakes. And concretely, that will mean that you use only language patterns which you know very well, and you won't risk using new patterns which you aren't sure of. This is the best way to avoid making any progress at all. Whenever one of my students makes a mistake, I take this as an opportunity to explain a new rule or to re-explain a pattern that we have studied before. A mistake is a sign that you haven't internalized a pattern yet. You will internalize it soon if only you embrace the mistake as an opportunity to improve. As a coach, I love mistakes because they shed the light on a particular way that the brain of the student works, like, due to their background or their existing language knowledge or whatever. And the mistakes show me what the student can learn next and how I can explain things to them better. It's a great way for me as a coach to learn and grow. So when you're studying with me, make sure you make tons of mistakes because that's how we both will learn and we both will get better. Mistakes should really be seen as an opportunity to learn and be encouraged, not punished. Number 5, and this is both a great thing and a terrible thing, is the group dynamics. And in the case of a group of teenagers, which you might have been with when you were learning French at school, well, it's pretty much as bad as it gets. Imagine this. You have very little time to speak, and if you make mistakes, you will be punished. Can it really get any worse? Well, yeah, it can. You actually have to do that in front of a group of your peers, and those peers happen to be teenagers like you. And you know how judgmental and just downright disempowering other teenagers can be, right? How secure and confident were you as a teenager? Were you willing to speak up and possibly say something stupid in front of everyone? How did you feel about them judging you, maybe even making fun of you? You will agree that it is about as bad a setting as it gets if the goal is to make progress. You just cannot make progress in that situation. The truth is, a group of your peers can make or break your success at learning French. In case of a group of teenagers in a school context, well, they are more likely to break it. You can only learn a language if your environment is safe and forgiving. Anything else will trigger your brain's protection reflex, and this sacrifices your ability to make progress in order to increase your chances of survival. So either learning in a one-on-one context with a supportive coach or teacher or being in a supportive group is absolutely critical to your progress. Peers that are cheering you on and encourage you and go through the same thing as you can really make a huge difference in your results. So if you'd like to find such a group, I strongly recommend you join the French Fluency Accelerator. Not only will you have daily support from me, but you'll also be supported daily by the most awesome French students that I know. You'll find a link in the description to check it out. We also have testimonials from some of the students in the group, so you can get to learn them even before you join. Just check it out. Number 6 is no connection with real life French. So for a very long time, I'm talking before the internet, in times when the world was not so connected, students have been studying language in schools without any connection to the language as it is actually spoken. In the 20th century, the programs for learning living languages were actually copied from the programs for learning Latin, a language that had been dead for centuries. So you can imagine that it was not exactly, the priority was just not to speak in real life. Let's just put it this way. And this is getting better. So if you are lucky, you can get a 1-week trip to a French-speaking country, or you can get a language assistant, which is a young native sent directly to your school. If you have a relatively young person, you might have had that. For example, I was a French assistant in Munden in Austria. That's actually how I moved to Austria in the first place, when I was 25. And in my first week, I was made to meet all the classes that I would work with, and I had to introduce myself. That was a full week of being stared at by hundreds of the biggest eyes I'd ever seen in my life. Those eyes were really saying to me, "Really? From France? Like a real French guy? Like he really speaks this weird language that we're learning that no one's speaking? How is that even possible?" If after years of studying a language, you find yourself staring at a native like they are some alien coming from another world that you barely knew existed, your school is just doing something wrong. Taking a language out of its environment and studying a purified version of it in a classroom is just the weirdest thing ever. No wonder it doesn't work. If you want to learn a modern living language, you need as much contact with the real life language as you possibly can. So I strongly recommend interacting with real French content every day. So we've gone over the 6 things that have gone terribly wrong in your French class, and please let me know in the comment if you have identified any of these in your previous study, whether it was in school when you were a teenager or more recently in a language school maybe. Just let me know in the comment if you've had any of that and what you're going to do now to retarget it. Now, let me recap quickly what those 6 things were and what you can do about them. Number 1 was to be and stay motivated. By the way, I'm cooking up a special video about that and it will be coming very soon. So make sure you subscribe so you don't miss it. 2 is to focus on speaking, not on grammar. Number 3 is to embrace mistakes. Mistakes are the beacon of what you can learn next. So welcome them and don't feel bad about yourself for making mistakes. Number 4 is to learn in a small group or a one-on-one setting so you have plenty of time to speak. Number 5, if you have a peer group, you want to make sure that they are supporting and helping you. And number 6 is to stay in touch with actual French content and culture as much as possible. That's it for today. Again, if you would like some more personalized help from me, you can study with me one-on-one or join my group program, the French Fluency Accelerator. In all my programs, I make sure that everything on this list is really covered and taken care of, and you'll find all the links in the description below. Else, you can watch this other video, and I will be back next Monday with a brand new one. See you next week.